experts with us to take the conversation forward. Mr. H.P. Ranina, Senior Advocate at Supreme Court, and Amit Tandon, Founder and MD at IiAS. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining in. So, like we've been saying, the caveats are in place. This is a developing story. It could be Noel Tata, but I think the purpose of this discussion is to have sort of a larger, clearer view in terms of when we're looking at trusts, Tata Trust or any other trust, and it comes to succession planning, the rules which are at play. So, Mr. Ranina, if you could come in on this, like Shireen also pointed out, that the feeling seems to be that it would be, preferable to have someone from within the family to continue to be at the helm of the trust. But there are sort of a lot of non-Tata members as well who are trustees, who are part of, who are part of the trustee group. For instance, there is Darius Kambata, there is Mr. Venu Srinivasan of the TVS group. So just tell us that is it a given that the trustee, the chairman, would be from the family itself, or can a non-family member also get the chairmanship position?
Surabhi, thank you for having me. I think a non-family member can also have that position, but you're right, and Shireen is equally right when she says that generally, to keep the Tata tradition, the family name, a Tata family member may be made at the chairman of the Tata Trust. Now, Noel Tata seems to be the right person because he's already involved in several major companies like Tata International, Trent, Voltas Limited, and he has a complete grip over the activities. At the same time, I would like to point out that Tata Trust has now become a fairly large organization, both in India and abroad. And you need a full-time person or a person who can devote a lot of time to the activities of Tata Trust. And it is for this reason that somebody like Melanie Mistry seems to be a good person to fit in the sense that not as chairman, but maybe as a full-time trustee or a permanent trustee, which is now going to be made, because he has been looking after the affairs of Tata Trust in the last few years, and in full, in conformity with what Mr. Ratan Tata has been telling him. So they have both worked together in tandem in the last few years, and the Tata Trusts are now well positioned to achieve their objectives. But I must emphasize, Tata Trust is a big organization. It's not just a small trust, and they have to manage several projects and properties. And you need a person who has the time to devote to the activities of Tata Trust. So with Melanie Mistry being brought in, Noel Tata would be the chairman, and the activities of the trust would now go on in full swing.
Right. Mr. Tandon, good morning. Thank you for joining in as well. And as Mr. Ranina was pointing out, right, you would need somebody who would have this full-time devotion to this post as well as the chairman of the trust. Now, as a proxy advisory firm, what would you be looking for in an ideal candidate as the chairperson of an organization as large as the Tata Trust is?
Thank you very much for calling me for your show today. I'd first like to begin by saying that let me express my sadness at the passing away of Mr. Tata. One of the things, we've all been reading about what his contributions are, but one of the things I'd like to emphasize is the fact that his enduring legacy, if I may say, is the fact that in telling Indian businesses that they can compete globally and they can compete with the best. And that's a lesson which, when he began on internationalizing the Tata Group, very few businesses had an offshore presence. But today, when you look at it, Indian companies have a sizable presence overseas. So let me say that. Coming to the person itself, I think what is important at this time is the process which they're following. And there needs to be a general awareness in terms of what is it that the role requires. As Mr. Ranina pointed out, the Tata Trusts are a large organization, and therefore they have a great deal of responsibility towards the philanthropic activities which they are undertaking. But equally important is the fact that what you want is you need that alignment between the trusts, Tata Sons, and the operating companies. When a few years ago, there was this whole turbulence which happened with regard to Cyrus Mistry and with regard to the various businesses, it was because at one level, this alignment was broken, and it seemed And of course, we have no way of knowing. It's the insiders who will tell us. But for a moment, it seemed that the trusts were expectations from Tata Sons were completely different, and Tata Sons' expectations from the companies were completely different. So if you have a person who understands both what is happening in the operating companies, which is of interest to all the investors and all your viewers, and what is happening at the trust level and what the expectations are, and is able to balance these two, is what is critical. I will just want to add one thing that, when we think about it, the structure which the Tatas have is phenomenal. You've got the profit-making companies and you have the trusts. But what they've done very cleverly, if I may say, and this was done almost a century ago, was put in Tata Sons in between. If in today's day and time you look at what has happened, and a recent example is OpenAI, which has kind of run into rough weather, it is because you've got a business which is a not-for-profit and a business which is making profit, and the same company within itself is trying to balance the two. So Tatas have done a phenomenal role. The person who's there would need to understand the legacy and how to take this forward, balancing between the two.
No, fair point, and we've seen that, and I think Mr. N. Chandrasekharan has sort of donned that mantle with so much of grace, right? Bringing all the group companies together and working with, of course, members of the family to keep the overall ethos intact as well. And we've seen the absolute wide acceptance of the role that he's played. Mr. Ranina, to come back to the chairmanship of the trusts, both the trusts, Sir Ratan Tata and Sir Dorabji Tata Trust. Now, would this have to be a majority sort of decision? What if there is some dissent among the trustees, on the nomination, on the name? What are the options perhaps on the table? Just from a legal standpoint, it might be absolutely unanimous, and we'll know in the next couple of hours. But typically, when we're talking about succession planning in a family trust, what are the different options on the table? Mr. Ranina? Okay, I think we've lost that line with Mr. Ranina. We'll come back to him for that. But Mr. Tandon, if I could put that question to you, that this could be an absolutely unanimous call, but otherwise, I mean, what do we see? What is the practice that you've seen, and is it enough for the majority to sort of rally around or rally behind one name?
Look, it's very difficult to say what is. I'm not a legal expert, and therefore I won't comment in terms of what will happen on the trust. But ideally, you do want to see a broad consensus. Now, if someone is putting forward, let's say there are two candidates and there is a majority in favor of one, it's not unusual for the remaining candidates to say that, look, in the interest of having consensus and in the interest of having a cohesive group, we'll all back up one person. So even if my personal preference is for A and not B, but the majority are in favor of B, it's quite likely that I say, okay, this is what will keep the harmony of the trust. These are the priorities. As long as the candidate is agreeable to these priorities, let's go ahead. Ideally, if you see a consensus, that's, of course, the optimum solution.
A consensus is always the best way forward. I think we have Shireen back with us on the line, and she has some questions for the panelists as well. Shireen, back to you.
No, I was just coming back to that point that you were asking Mr. Ranina, and, this again goes back to the changes that were brought in post the mystery battle when the Articles of Association were unanimously passed at the AGM of Tata Sons, which essentially, had to deal with the appointment of the chairman of Tata Sons as well as the relationship with the trust. So following that amendment and that resolution, it was made very clear that the chairman of either the Sir Dorabji Tata Trust or the Sir Ratan Tata Trust, or of both, would not be eligible to be the chairman of Tata Sons. So this split, was put in place post that bitter battle that we saw playing out at the Tatas. And even as part of that, the process of selection, the selection committee, etc., was also put in place. So I don't think that there is is any confusion on the way forward on the selection process itself. I think it will now boil down to just ensuring that you have the right person at the helm of affairs, given the many considerations as well as the unique structure of the Tata Trust, as well as how they control the listed entities as well, with Tata Sons, as Amit pointed out, being in the middle. But when we were speaking yesterday to the former Tata Sons board member R. Gopalakrishnan, as well as my conversation with Kumaramangalam Birla, and perhaps we could play those bites out for you. But Mr. Gopalakrishnan said that when he, essentially he was a Unilever guy, when he joined Tata Sons, he said that I was also mystified as to how this works, how this operates. But on being part of the organization, he understood that this unique sort of structure, which has worked for over 150 years plus, is something that has, held the group in good stead and has allowed the group to do what it believes is best, both as far as its philanthropic aspiration and ambition is concerned, but as well as its wealth and value creation as far as its listed entities are concerned. So I think a lot of refinement took place post the boardroom battle, and I think there is clarity, as I pointed out, on the process, and a decision will be now taken to finally officially appoint the successor to Ratan Tata.
All right. Thank you for that context, Shireen. Let's see if we have Mr. Ranina back with us for a final comment. Mr. Ranina, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So we were just discussing, as Shireen also pointed out, that the process is very, very clear. And obviously, there's a complete disconnect between Tata Sons and the Tata Trust now. So in terms of the selection process and, finally getting the successor to Mr. Ratan Tata, consensus would be the best way and the most graceful way forward. We all know that. Is that what you would expect?
This is what will happen. I'm sure about this. I agree with Mr. Tandon that everything will be done in a consensual manner. There will be no conflict, I can assure you that. They would have decided informally amongst themselves, and the person will be appointed as the chairman straight away. There'll be no discussion on this subject at all at a trust meeting. I'm very confident of that.
All right. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining in. And we look forward to connecting again with you once the official announcement is made. As we're picking up from sources, as Shireen has just told us, that in all likelihood, the expectation is that indeed it will be Mr. Noel Tata who will succeed Mr. Ratan Tata as the chairman of the Tata Trusts. Well, as we take your leave, I think we're getting some visuals, and that is